Thank you very much. The end. Thank you. You've just watched the world's shortest TED Talk. Any questions?
Actually, this slide refers to our topic, which is preparing for death. We can say with certainty, 100% certainty, that all of us will die. What are you doing about this? Much of our talk is geared towards those who are chronologically challenged or older. However, everyone, no matter your age, has an older friend or relative who needs your help. And as we all know too well, sometimes death comes before old age.
Imagine that you're in a hospital room, in a bed of your own. That's nice. You're surrounded by friends and family. There are machines beeping in the background. There's a catheter dripping something. And you realize that you're about to die.
This is time for your final words. What will you say? Who will be there? Do you wish that you were at home? Are there things left undone?
One other question, in addition to those Lindsay just posed, might be, why in the world are Lindsay and Don doing this TEDx talk? Good question. We are not experts on the subject of dying. We've never done it before. We're rank amateurs, but that's a good reason, I think, for us to be up here. We have avoided some of those tough conversations that I think other people often avoid, and we thought this would be an opportunity to sort of force us to confront those issues and to read and study and prepare to talk, and hopefully to share valuable information with you. And of course, if information can be shared, that's good, and if it can be acted upon, that's even better.
In her early 90s, my grandmother Mary became unable to swallow. This led her to a hospital bed at Rapid City Regional. My mother had power of attorney, so when the doctor said that Mary was going to die, but that with a feeding tube her life may be prolonged, the family faced an agonizing dilemma. Do we choose to authorize the feeding tube and prolong her life, or deny this heroic measure and guarantee that she dies soon?
As you can imagine, my wife, Jeannie, was pretty upset about this. She hoped that Mary might have left some indication at home about what it is she wanted under these catastrophic circumstances. So Jeannie went to Mary's house. She kind of ransacked the place, and fortunately, miraculously, she found a written document. Hard to read, so I'll read it. I find abhorrent, she says, nasogastric tube feedings when I'm paralyzed and no longer able to swallow. This was a huge relief, and armed with this information, Jeannie and her siblings knew what to do. In short order, Mary was back home in her own bed, surrounded by friends and family. She listened to Lawrence Welk music, which was important to her, and jokes and stories and some improvised guitar. It was wonderful. Shortly, she passed. A couple days, she passed. And it was, of course, a heartbreaking loss when she died. But there was some comfort, I think, in the fact that she had been able to tell her children what it is she wanted, how she wanted to die, and her children, thanks to these written instructions, were able to act in a way that satisfied Mary's wishes.
Why don't more people perform this vital and loving service to their loved ones? For one thing, Americans are not all that great at accepting the reality and indeed inevitability of death. Peter Saul, who gave a TED Talk in 2011, said 1 in 8 believe themselves to be immortal. Most of the rest of us are frightened, and all of us know that thorough preparation takes hard work. But ready or not, 100% of us will die.
We could provide you with a list of 100 or 200 itemized things on a checklist for you to do in preparation of death. But not everything on that list would be pertinent to you, and you might want to rearrange the list anyway. We advise you, or we ask you though, to go to the internet, download such a list, and use it as a guide. Today, we're going to confine ourselves to 5 more general topics rather than a specific list. And our hope is that from these 5 topics, questions will emerge and you'll be able to create your own customized checklist. So of the 5 topics, the first is spirituality. Spirituality means something more than religion. My mother, who died 3 years ago, when she learned she had terminal cancer, visited with members of her church. She had lived with the Episcopalian Church for many years. Deacons came over, parish members, and one day the priest came over. Mom, all during this time, said that she was not afraid to die and she did not have doubts about what happened afterwards. So she had a certain kind of serenity. She even sat there with the priest and with the rest of us and planned her own funeral. And she was able to do that because she had that bedrock spirituality, bedrock religion. Now the wheel has turned, and it's my turn to make those same kinds of decisions and answer those same kinds of questions. And I'm not in the same place as my mother. I consider myself a spiritual person, but organized religion doesn't have a strong hold on me, and that leaves me with lots of questions, lots of searching to do. So even though I'm trying to prepare for death, here's an area where I'm not quite ready. I've got some work to do.
Sometimes it's a matter of how you look at the world. In June 2013, Dad, you gave a family eulogy for Amelia, my 4.5-month-old niece. And you spoke of ripples and trajectories and suggested that all humans, no matter the age, affect the lives of others in ways that we don't even realize. And this ripple effect goes on forever and ever, connecting us to the rest of the world and bestowing on all of us a kind of immortality, not immorality, immortality.
I didn't intend that in my eulogy.
And this thought, this spiritual thought, gave me comfort then and now.
A second area to explore would be legal and financial issues. This is often something that comes to mind first before anything else, for logical reasons, I think. We are not experts on this subject, and this is an area in which the best advice we can give is to recruit experts, seek help, talk to a lawyer, talk to a financial planner, possibly talk to a senior advisor or senior advocate. These are people now with a new profession of guiding folks like me through the rocks and shoals of old age.
2 sources that we especially recommend as guides are a checklist for my family, published by the AARP, and this short pamphlet called 5 Wishes by Aging with Dignity, which is a nonprofit organization. This provides helpful advice and legal forms.
Next is relationships. Many of you remember former Governor Bill Janklow. When he learned that he was about to die, he made it a mission to reconcile with those with whom he had battled, of whom there were many. He made dozens and perhaps hundreds of phone calls to these people, asking them not to be his enemy, but to be his friend. I was fortunate to get one of those calls, and I was deeply moved by his attitude and his point of view, and I resolved to adopt the same attitude, at least insofar as that issue is concerned. and to do my best to reconcile and to do it sooner than on my deathbed, because otherwise I'm going to have too many phone calls to make.
So we hope that if there are loved ones with whom you have a rocky relationship, take action to resolve them, or if there are people who you are devoted to keep as enemies, do that with awareness and intentionality. Health. Last year, we each read a book by Atul Gawande called Being Mortal. He is a surgeon. He said that in Rome, in ancient Rome, the life expectancy was 27. In the 1900s in the United States, it crept up to 47. Today, it is nearly double and inching toward 100. So old age and retirement are relatively new concepts. And this unfamiliar territory is a place where most of us will spend a lot of our time. But society nor individuals were not coping very well with this.
For example, most of us want to live in the house we currently live in until the day we die. And Gawande says that more than 350,000 Americans will fall and break their hip this year. Of those, 20% will never walk again. Gawande further says that the risk of falling and breaking your hip is in part a function of age. If you're beyond age 65, if you're diabetic, if you have weak muscle tone, if you have poor balance, if you take more than 4 prescription medicines in a day, then you're at high risk. Well, I'm 68 and all of those markers are descriptive of me. Our house, which we've lived in for 40 years, is a split level with 3 or 4, depending on whether you ask my wife, staircases in the house. And it's a death trap for us. And the time has come for us to find a safer place to live. But that's easier said than done.
Bucket list. This is the list of things that you definitely need to do before you kick the bucket. So this is going to be different for all of us. And it's kind of a fun thing to get to do. So first on my bucket list is knitting a hat for all of my loved ones. This is my nephew Arden, and he got the first one. You might get the second one.
That's good. Thank you. I'm an economist, so maybe you expect that my first thing on the bucket list would be the search for treasure. But that's really not what I'm about. And what I really would like to do is to visit Machu Picchu. That is a dream that is within my ability today, and I'll be able to do this probably for the next 2 or 3 years, but it's strenuous, it's physically taxing. I won't be able to do it much longer. So again, this is an opportunity for me to stop dreaming and start acting.
Speaking of action, we have come to the final and most difficult part of our talk. How does one convert thinking and talking into action? So we don't really think this, okay? But TED Talks can have a high decay rate. So obviously, we love TED Talks. This is a wonderful, wonderful way to celebrate and listen to people's life stories. But after a week, I might forget a lot of the important points. And after 6 weeks, I have forgotten the title. So in order for this to have meaning, for our talk to have meaning for you and to make an impact, it must lead to action.
So reaching deep back into memory, here's a parable for action. It's 1966, if you can believe that, and I'm a freshman in college. 2 other classmates and I have been assigned a sociology paper, which we're writing jointly, and we begin to argue about what Marshall McLuhan would say about a particular point. Well, that's probably not a familiar name to most people in this room, but back then he was the most famous person in the world, a little bit like Mark Zuckerberg today, I suppose. So as we're arguing, one of my classmates, Scotty McLennan, said, why don't we call Marshall McLuhan? He'll settle this for us. And I said, Scotty, we're freshmen in college. We can't call the most famous person in the world. He said, Don, it can't hurt to try. He picked up the phone, and in 5 minutes, we were talking to Marshall McLuhan, and he settled the issue for us. I don't remember if he settled it in my favor. That was a transformational moment. That was a moment of impact in my life because I realized that I had been, to some degree, imprisoned by my own sense of limitations. I think that may apply to others. And sometimes moving from the realm of talk to the realm of action is easy. In this case, it just meant picking up the phone. Every journey begins with a single step. And as you can tell, Lindsay and I have more to do on our journey. We've raised a lot of questions today, and we really haven't answered any of them. But we're hoping that some of these questions we've raised will be provocative to you and will lead to answers of your own. But I've got to take a step. My first step is to emulate Lindsay's grandma Mary, who left a declaration of what should be done in her final moments. I have such a declaration. It's written, it instructs, or it doesn't instruct, but it asks Lindsay and her mom to avoid taking heroic measures to save my life. I attach a lot of importance to this. I've just now signed it, and Lindsay, here it is.
No, I don't want it.
That's not in the script.
You're my dad, and I consider you to be immortal, and I'm just not quite ready for this.
Listen, I understand. That's one of the things that makes this so difficult. But I'd like you to take it back. At least know what my wishes are. So when the crisis comes, even though you've got authority, you can consider what my wishes are.
Okay, Dad. And you did, you signed it. Now we want to give you an opportunity to pick up the phone, just like Scotty, and think of one action item that you can take. And this is your first step. Then text this number, 38470, and enter TEDxRC. In 2 weeks, you will receive a reminder that says, have you started yet?
You may take advantage of that option and you may not. Either way, we hope you resolve to take action of some kind. Action will not make you immortal. You're going to die. But it will make the lives of your loved ones easier and more comfortable in a time of extreme crisis. And we can't think of a better motivation for action than that. Thank you.